What's a good clickbaity title for this video? Like the best app-driven board game of all time?
I don't think that's clickbait. I just think it's true.
Welcome to Table Knots. Today we are sitting down and reviewing...
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Max, a copy of Destinies by Lucky Duck Games. We were sent this game for review. We've also reviewed Chronicles of Crime. We're big fans of that. So how do we fare about this? First, let's talk about what Destinies is. Destinies is a competitive, app-driven RPG, choose-your-own-adventure board game. Most of these are cooperative. This is quite different in the sense that we're actually competing against each other, and whatever information we uncover by flipping over tiles or by clicking on things on the app is actually shared in between us. The only thing that's hidden is our personal objectives, of which we choose one of two options. Each time you set up the game, you're going to choose a different character and find out their destinies, and then throughout the game you're going to be attempting to complete that, enter your finale, and win the game before the other person.
Accurate.
So as we said, the theme is dark, gritty, medieval fantasy. I personally am a fan of that. It is fairly generic fantasy for the most part, so if you're over that, that might be something to keep in mind. I know you like
You should
fantasy.
not ever be over that.
Yeah, she loves generic fantasy. I mean, Skyrim, Destinies, stuff like that. But that's okay. Some people love it. Some people just hate it. I know it's a polarizing thing because it's kind of... Some people would say overdone. I know you wouldn't consider that the case, but some people would say it's overdone, so do be aware of that. I do like this. It's a little grittier. It reminds me of just like every scenario we've played so far felt like the end of the world. Like a plague was happening and I mean, things were going bad. Even if it wasn't, it just felt very dark and gritty, which I quite enjoyed. Okay, so moving on to the components. Danielle, can you walk us through some of what we see here in front of us?
Yes.
Throwing you under the bus, huh?
Yeah. I didn't know that was my assignment. You didn't tell me that.
Okay, well, here you go. What do you see in front of us, and what do you like about them?
I see purple dice.
That's a hit.
My favorite part.
All right, we see purple dice, we see miniatures, we see beautiful art on top of these tiles that we're going to turn over, and on top of the item deck, which is quite massive, by the way.
Teeny tiny miniatures.
Yeah, these are something that I want to talk about.
And a big miniature.
Yeah, we've got one giant miniature, or a large miniature, two fairly normal size, maybe slightly larger. Slightly larger than normal, and then you've really got miniatures, which I think is well done. I don't think I'd want these in every single board game because they're gonna be impossible to paint. I mean, not impossible, but very hard to paint. Yeah. And they lack a little bit of detail, and trying to figure out where to put them back in the vacuum insert is kind of impossible, but it works really well.
It works for this size.
Yeah, and it works really well at making a game, you know, the box size that Destinies is. It's not a large game. They could have had the same game with real miniatures, but it would have ended up being the same size as Nemesis or something like that, which this game doesn't need to be. I think they do a really good job of keeping everything concise, and I think that's commendable. Then you've got the little cardboard. I mean, these are just cardboard, but they're very thick and very hard cardboard. Everything is really nice, and especially the dual layer player boards.
Max likes to try to break his games, and I don't think that this is a cardboard that you can break easily.
Maybe with my teeth, but I could probably do it, but not easily for certain. The one thing I think it's interesting, I was looking at some deluxeified components for this game, and you can get neoprene player mats, but
you don't need them.
I want the dual layer player mats. This is great. I don't know why I'd want anything other than this. So I think components on this game are excellent. Now, let's talk about the rulebook, which I don't think you have any experience with.
I touched it when I took it out of the box.
That's true. We could be like Jamie. Let's pull a Jamie. Yeah. That is some Michael Scott Paper Company quality paper right there. This feels great. You'll notice the miniature is very bold, or the rulebook is very bold and big. The words they're not small. It's not very wordy. Everything is very clear, and I'll say I probably read this rulebook for under 5 minutes. That's one of my favorite things about any of these Lucky Duck games, including Chronicles of Crime and Destinies is no exception, is that really there's just a few things you need to learn from the rulebook, and the app will walk you through basically everything else. Understanding how to do skill checks, probably want to read the rulebook for that. Everything else, you can kind of just turn on the app and go. It kind of runs you through it all by itself and makes it a very seamless transition from opening to tabling.
Accurate.
So let's get on into the meat of the video, which is going to be the gameplay and the replayability that we see in Destinies. So throughout the game, to start off, you're going to set up just a few of these tiles, and you're going to be choosing where to go. Normally when you step on a new tile, you'll start to place the other ones that are adjacent to it as well, orthogonally, and you're kind of creating a map. Eventually the map will cap out. This isn't a sandbox game where you can, you know, sprawl the entire world and you're going to use all the tiles. No, each scenario has a set map. You just need to explore that set map. In doing so, you're going to be finding new points of interest, which are going to be marked by a chit that I did not grab out of the box, but I don't need to, or little miniatures. And then on the app, you literally just click on the tile you want to go to or the area you want to visit. You move your miniature on the board, and then you do it all on the app, basically. So if you're not into app games, probably not for you.
Why'd you click on this video?
Yeah, but I will say that I like app games. They're fine, but this does it better than any of the other ones I've experienced so far. So I don't have anything against app-based games, but if you do, I still think this is worth trying at least, because it is different and it does it extremely well, makes it extremely streamlined. So we've talked about gameplay, but what about replayability? The rulebook recommends that if you play the same scenario again, use the same character, so you don't have like the knowledge of, hey, this person's objective is this. Because if I played the witch and then we played the same scenario and you played the witch, I know exactly what you're going for. Yeah. So it does recommend you do that.
But we kind of messed that up anyways, because as soon as the snenario was
we
over,
talked
we were
about
like,
it.
What was your other destiny?
Yeah, we were super interested in knowing like what we were both going for, which I think is fun. That was big, you know, that was a big part of our enjoyment of the game, was discussing how close we were and how we were going for the opposite things or what our objective was. But as far as replayability goes, we can't touch on it with fact because we haven't replayed any of them. I struggle to see there being a lot of replayability in this game. I certainly don't think it's impossible. I'd be happy to sit down with Doolin and play this one because he has not played Destinies yet. I'd be happy to sit down with him and play with him and play the same or a different character. It doesn't really matter to me because
there's 3 characters.
There's 3 characters per scenario, yes.
So like we've played 2 of the characters.
Right,
You could
so
play the same and then Doolin could play the other one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like there's a way to do it.
There's certainly replayability there. It's not a game I'm certain you're going to want to replay, which is fine. It's not an expensive game. It's a small box. We've spent, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours on the 3 scenarios, probably 90 minutes a scenario, unless you have kids and dinner waiting, then it's a lot longer.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. We don't recommend it. But there's a lot of content in there, and I don't feel the need to replay it, but I don't think I need that replayability for me to recommend this game, because I certainly think it's a great game regardless of whether you're going to go back and replay the scenarios.
Still worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, gameplay wise, what do you enjoy about Destinies?
Cut.
Okay. I'm not cutting that.
I don't know how to articulate what I enjoy about a game. I don't know. I enjoy all of it. I like the purple dice. I like to roll dice.
Welcome, Draco.
So I like the dice. I like throwing dice. That's always fun. I like the theme. I like the exploration, investigation, choosing my own adventure, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I agree with all those points. I think this game does a really good job of, you know, giving you a world, and it's not open world. There's definitely some limitations to it, but you can figure out
There's still a lot to look at and explore and
absolutely
search. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's still a lot that you can figure out, you know, like my objective is this, but you have to take clues that the world gives you to figure out how to do that. You know, your Destinies tells you at the end that like you will need to go to this place to finish it up. But if you have to find, I don't know, a noble person to support your cause, and the tiles start unfolding, and one of the things is like the city, the wealthy city. You can assume that maybe just with the context of knowing that it's the wealthy city, that there's probably a noble or two there. Right. Or if you need to find some thieves or something, you may be able to go to the prison or the guard tower or something. Like it gives you enough context and clues in this adventure discovery thing.
That you always know what to do next.
Right, exactly. It always you can always piece it together. It's just up to you to do so, which I think is good. It doesn't tell you plainly, go to tile 43, but it gives you enough information that you typically have something to go on. And I think it does that really well. And of course, with the app, makes it just entirely seamless. You can click on one thing, go there, click on another thing, go there. It makes it really easy to follow. And you can also click on it and like, it'll tell you a little tidbit of information. Like, this is the watchtower, in case you happened to forget what tile 12 was when it came out earlier in the game. I agree. We both like dice. We both like tossing dice. I think that the story aspect is actually really well done. A lot of board game stories aren't the greatest. I mean, they're not bad, but they're not that intriguing. I found it really interesting how in this game, and I don't want to put too much spoilers out there, but our paths, we didn't engage throughout the game, but our paths were
intertwined.
Yes, our paths were very intertwined. Our mission was in fact like the direct, not our mission was the direct opposite, but like our end goal was the direct.
Our motivations.
Right, exactly. And I really like that. We weren't fighting. We weren't, in each other's faces messing each other up, because that's just not the game that this is. But
it was a race.
It is a race.
Every time.
Every
it was a
time.
Race down to the last turn.
We should clarify at this point, we have played 3 of the 5 available scenarios in the core box. We've only played at the 2-player count. We've not tried the 3-player count. We don't have the expansions or anything like that. So that's all we're going off on right now. But in those 3 games, I mean, we were both at the finale every time. And we were both maybe 2 turns away from each other from ending it.
There's also a little asterisk next to the second game.
Yeah, the second game was chaotic.
There's a lot of children happening.
A lot of children. And I was also supposed to be cooking dinner soon. We were like rushing it. We had children trying to engage with us and play. Yeah, the second game was rough. But it wasn't at the game's fault. It was just the situation that we were in at the time.
I was saying that because we don't really have an official winner.
Yes.
You won the first scenario. We don't have an official winner. I won the third one.
That's right, yeah.
But I won the best.
That's true. I do think in the first scenario, I was 1 turn ahead of you.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think in the third scenario, you were 2 turns ahead of me. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
We never know this, but the way that the app kind of explains it to you, I failed a dice roll. Because, I mean, it's not like it was just a random toss the dice. I had the agency to use my purple dice, and I used more earlier than I should have. I should have held on to 1 or 2, because the purple dice allow you to get extra successes, and failed a probably pivotal moment that would have either won me the game or put me right there, and then you won it on the very next turn. So it's not one of those that, I don't think it's one of those that the game rails you into being equal the entire time. And by that, I mean, you're not on rails. Like, every time we play, we wouldn't end the game 1 turn away from each other. I don't think that's the case. I've heard of people that have, Jamie and Jeff talked about how Jamie got, like, destroyed in their first game. Like, she was nowhere close. Like, I don't think it puts you on rails and gets you there. But we were both pretty good at figuring out what needed to happen, and ended up being very, very competitive every time, which just made it that much more tense.
I think I like this game because of that, because you're better at strategy and board games in general.
Not this past month.
That's true.
You've been crushing me.
Crushing it. But I like more thinky things, like where you have to investigate and figure things out and connect the dots and remember things that have happened before. And so I feel like this game does a good job at combining those two things. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I really like the way that it works just in general. It's very unique. I mean, I've not played a game that does the choose your own adventure as well as this one that I'm aware of, and especially not one that's so accessible, because this is just literally sit down, the app will do it all for you, and it's incredible. And Draco is just very cuddly right now.
He's very happy about this game.
So we very much enjoy the gameplay here at hand. There's merchants with different items that are available.
That's the worst part of the game.
That honestly will be a critique, I think. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment, but there's merchants with items available, and one of those things where you may see that this merchant has an herb or a torch and not really care about it at that point in time. And then later on in the game, you're like, oh I need an herb or a torch. And you go back, and it really just pushes the pieces together, but it's one of those things you can't just buy every single item. Money is pretty scarce in this game. I can't just go to a merchant and be like, I may need one of these later. Let me buy them all. Yeah, absolutely.
Most of these,
people are seemingly
impoverished.
Right, exactly. I think it does it really well at giving you those key things to keep mind of, and I think that's where you do better than I do, is just knowing, like, I would be in trouble if it weren't for the fact that you can kind of get a little excerpt on the app of, like, what this place was, because if I had to strictly remember all of that, I think you would demolish me. I would be backtracking so hard trying to find, where the blacksmith is, but fortunately the app takes care of that really easily. But we both really like Destinies. We'll get into final thoughts at the end, but you've heard just our initial likes of this. Do you have any critique? We can jump in with the merchant part first. It's not really...
Yeah, honestly, getting this stuff out for the merchant is not that bad. The worst part of the game is putting it up.
Yeah.
Because of this big stack of cards that is numbered, which is great.
Yes.
I love the organization, but there are 76 of these, and there's multiples of some of them.
Right.
So it's kind of a pain in the butt when you need to pull out 36, 2 8s, a 16, and a 27. And I've noticed that when it lists that, I don't think that it's always like 1, 2, 3. Like, it doesn't always go in order.
Always chronologically?
Yeah, sometimes I think it's like, he'll say, grab 2 8s. So I grab 2 8s, and then grab a 70, and I grab a 70, and it's like, go
grab
back
a 24.
To 36.
Right, yeah.
Literally the only critique I have.
Right.
Though.
Everything else for setup is really smooth.
Oh.
Yes.
I do just have one more thought that I was thinking about. And this is probably just because I am not very organized, but I do kind of wish, because everything has its place, which I love.
Except for your gold and experience.
No, I was going to say that because you don't have all 3 purple dice every time.
Right.
Like, you might use one. Oops.
Just like that.
Just like that. And then you can't use it until it refreshes. And so I'm bad at, like, setting that one aside and remembering I only have 2. I wish there was, like, a designated place. Put your exhausted die
Right,
here.
exhausted and active, something like that.
That's the only thing I could think of besides the massive amount of cards. But the massive amount of cards is good. It's just...
Absolutely. You want the variety. It's just a pain in the butt to have to search through the entire pile of cards to grab out 22,
there's
42. And
everywhere.
Yeah, it's like snowing in here with Draco's fur. Yeah, I think that's a critique for me, too. It's a critique, but it's not like a major thing.
Hi, Josh.
So any additional critiques, I really can't think of it. I think that those minor things are the only thing that really comes to mind. I mean, I'm trying to think of any additional critiques we have. I think there was one time in one of the scenarios where I did get a little just like totally lost. Like I did not know what to do next. But literally 1 or 2 turns later, I stumbled back into it. Like I figured out a way to get there. I was unsure of where to go to next. I visited a few places, and then I visited one more and got right back on track. So I think that 95% of the time you know what to look for. And there was that one instance where I did feel lost, and at that moment I was a little like disheartened. Like I was like, man, I don't freaking know what to do. But one more move, one more visiting a tile, and I found myself back on track. So I think that that's maybe a critique, but genuinely I'm probably just bad at board games.
It's just playing games.
Yeah. What are your final thoughts? Let's touch on how much you like it. We've talked about what we like. Touch on how much we like it, and if we want, you can give it a number rating if you want, but you don't have to.
Best game of all time.
You went there.
I went there.
You went there. If you have watched a recent top 5, top 6, your favorite board games of all time, this was number 1. I knew that coming in. But, man, that is high praise. So this for me, I mean, that was short and sweet from you, but for me, it's very good. I don't know where it sits yet on my top 10, and I do want to play the remaining 2 scenarios that we haven't yet touched on.
Because we haven't seen this.
Yeah, we haven't seen that bad boy yet. The last... I don't want to get into spoilers. The last scenario was very cool. I really liked the last scenario, I thought. Of course, the second was my least favorite because it was a nightmare. Not the scenario, just the scenario we were in with the children and the dinner, and it was a nightmare. But I really, really liked scenario 3, and I think that just what I imagine this has to do with something, like that's going to be cool. Yeah. I'm excited to see that. I don't have a number, but this is at least in consideration for a top 20 game of all time for me. At least. I mean, if not top 10. It's very good. I've seen heaps of praise on this game already, so this is probably nothing new to you. But if you are interested in this narrative, choose your own adventure, competitive, which is so unique to me. I didn't even realize this game was competitive until I got it. Like, I was interested in playing it and did not realize it was competitive. I thought it was strictly cooperative. Because that's what you see when you look at the game.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it would be really cool if there was a co-op version.
I want the expansion that allows you to play 2v2.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Because that would be great. Like me and Danielle versus Doolin and Emily. Like we're competing to fulfill our destinies and you're cooperating together. I don't know how that works.
Cooperating is what he just said.
I don't know how that works, but I imagine it would be really cool. But in general, we're both big fans of this game. And I'm excited to see what additional content. She's already asked me if we can get the expansion. We're already looking at whatever else we can get for, and we will absolutely play scenarios 4 and 5. Big fans of this game, and even if you don't like app-driven games, if the premise of a competitive story-driven game interests you, try it out and see, because it's great. It does it super well, and it's worth it. If you don't care about competitive story-driven games, RPGs, or apps, probably not for you, and that's okay.
If you've been playing Skyrim since 2011, try this one instead.
Thank you, Danielle, for your comments. I appreciate how much you loved the purple dice. What about Destinies makes you tick? What do you enjoy about it?
I like
Remy!